Hi there, welcome to my video lesson on pronation versus supination of the forearm. So to begin, when you hold your forearm in a horizontally flexed position, such as this position I'm showing you, a supinated position is where the palm is open and facing up towards the sky. In reverse, if I rotate my forearm so my palm faces downward, this is known as pronation. This is important not only for students that are in anatomy courses or medical professionals, but for those people who need to identify, people like nurses, doctors, who need to understand the difference between the two positions. And also it makes reading papers and textbooks a lot easier to kind of know the anatomical definitions or the anatomical positions. So again, this is supination versus pronation. And I've actually drawn on my arm, which I'll get into in a second here. Let me see if I can zoom in and focus a little bit better. I hope that you can see that. So the radius actually, if I'm showing my arm in an extended position, or my elbow in an extended position, you can see that the radius here, which I've drawn on my forearm pretty well, pretty decently, the radius actually is Latin for spoke or rod, and you can see that it has a somewhat rod-like appearance. Not that the ulna doesn't, but the ulna actually has a very important articulation on the end of it, which is the olecranon, which is also known as the elbow. And if you actually look up ulna using I can't even say the word. If you use the etymology of ulna, you'll see that it means the elbow. And these two bones are the two main bones in your forearm, and an easy way to remember the positions of where the bones are located is to think of the thumb as kind of like your anchor point. And I would remember when I tried to commit this to memory that when I was in school, I would always try to do something really stupid and dorky and say something like, you know, that's radical, man, that's rad, because RAD is the first three letters of radius. So, you know, when I would give thumbs up for some reason that deserved it or didn't, I would just give thumbs up radius, and that would help me remember which bone was on the side of my thumb, which is the radius. So if you know one of the two, it would be easier to memorize the location. Now I didn't draw the opposite side on the opposite side of my forearm, but when you rotate, and we just learned that this is a supinated position because my palm is open facing away, but if I was to pronate my forearm, the radius actually rotates over the ulna, whereas in a supinated position they stay separated from each other. So again, just to review, supination, pronation, and that's in a flexed position with the elbow. If I'm in an extended position where my elbow joint is extended, okay, this is also known as supination, and this is pronation, okay? I know there's some just other really interesting things about the bones of the forearm, the radius and the ulna. You can see, let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit more. You can see that here, the radius I've drawn, and the ulna here as well. One of the things that happens a lot with people is falling, and we instinctively know just from our own experiences and from watching others that when we fall, we tend to brace outwards like this, and it's a stereotyped reflex, and that's to protect our heads from hitting the ground. But when you fall and you stick your arm out in this manner, the radius actually absorbs most of the forces. And I've kind of drawn, I'm not sure if you can see it, but I've drawn kind of some like red arrows here to kind of designate the force shock. And what happens is this force shock when you fall actually spreads up the radius, okay? And there's actually a membrane in between the radius and the ulna called the interosseous membrane, and I've drawn that with some kind of oblique lines here. And these fibers are really important because they actually transmit extraneous force from the radius to the ulna, and that's really important because that force sharing actually protects the head of the radius here from shoving all the way up into the humerus and causing a lot more damage that would happen without, if this wasn't here, if the interosseous fibers weren't present. So the presence of these fibers is very important to share with the ulna. So that's typically why you don't see any damage to the humerus when you fall. Sometimes you can, I'm not saying that you don't, but if it's just one arm involved, if you're just bracing outwards, you typically just see maybe some fracturing in the radius or maybe even some light damage or soft tissue damage here in the ulna or along the ulna. But it's very important. And another interesting thing I wanted to share with you in regards to the arm is that, let me see if I can just zoom out here real quick to get a better perspective for you. Okay, so this is not a sexist thing, but it's actually a really interesting difference between the sexes. And unfortunately, I don't have a woman present with me here, but you'll have to take my word for it. Otherwise, I could show you directly. But so I mentioned kind of just briefly with the supination, pronation, I showed you flexion and extension. So this is more or less, this is a flexed elbow, this is an extended elbow. One of the things that you'll notice is if you raise your arm up and you're in a completely flexed position, the forearm actually lines up pretty perfectly with the upper arm. But if you notice, when you actually extend, there's kind of this like natural angle deviation from the midline of your body. And that actual, this is what we call anatomical position, by the way, but when that occurs, that is actually because of a articulation in the humerus known as the trochlea. And the trochlea literally means pulley in Latin. And it's a really smooth surface that allows your ulna to glide easily from flexion to extension. And the movement of the forearm outwards, how the forearm kind of deviates laterally outwards like this, is known as lateral deviation of the forearm, and it creates a space here known as the carrying angle. And interestingly, getting back to my whole point of even talking about having a woman here, is that a woman actually has a larger carrying angle in this position compared to a man, and that's actually thought to be evolutionary in reasoning because over time and over human history, women may have evolved that carrying angle to be larger to carry more items like buckets or even children or baby elephants. You can just go on and on, use your imagination, whatever they would carry. But interestingly, this carrying angle in both men and women diminishes if you pronate your forearm. Okay, so typically we don't carry a lot of things with a supinated forearm, but we tend to be somewhere in between the two. So anyway, I hope you found this video useful. This is me, by the way. And let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you found it useful, and good luck this semester or whatever you're using this for. Peace and love. Bye.